Pelosi saying last night on Jimmy Kimmel Live that President Trump wants to be impeached because he knows the Senate will bail him out. Let's bring in Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media, and Rick Unger, a Forbes.com contributor, and also a radio host. We've got radio on the brain, but here you are. You guys also have faces for TV, so we're glad that you're here.
Oh, thank you.
Kevin, let me ask you, do you think President Trump really does want to be impeached, like Nancy Pelosi says?
No.
I don't think so either.
I think he wants to just be left alone and let him do his job. Like, I do think he finds
they must have done
be...
some sort of message testing, Rick, or something, because she keeps saying that he wants this. He's trying to goad you into this. It's like her reverse psychology with her caucus.
I hate to say this, but I agree with both of you. I don't think he wants to be impeached. He cares about his legacy. He does not want to go down in the history books as one of 3 presidents to be impeached.
And also, if you consider what the result has been so far, Kevin, does he deserve to be impeached based on what we've seen so far?
No, not at all. And even if you had high crimes and misdemeanors stacking up, I think everybody saw with the Clinton impeachment how difficult it was to deal with a Senate that was of the other party.
Right.
And I think there's a practicality to the American electorate that's like, if you can't go all the way, why waste the time and the money doing it?
Okay, so but is that conventional wisdom wrong? Because I am also wondering if the comparisons to the late 90s is not really relevant now.
That's a fair point to make. But to me, more importantly, if, and I'm still saying if, there is a reason to impeach this president, then you can't not do it because of the practicalities. The Constitution demands.
You can.
Well, you can, but it's not honoring the Constitution. And I think that's kind of important. I know we're not supposed to feel that way, but I certainly do. The Constitution requires it. Here's what to watch for, though. You know, we all know how it's going to turn out in the Senate. We all know that he would get a very positive verdict. But it's the trial that matters. It's O.J. Simpson. He got the verdict he wanted, but he lost the trial. What would that trial look like? And how much control will Mitch McConnell exercise?
And I think that and that's why I don't think that the president really does want to be impeached, even though politically it might help him for re-election. Take a listen to Attorney General Bill Barr. He's in Alaska and did an interview. Listen here.
From my perspective, the idea of resisting a democratically elected president and basically throwing everything at him and you know, really changing the norms on the grounds that we have to stop this president. That's where the shredding of our norms and our institutions is occurring.
Kevin, you're nodding your head?
Well, Rick was just talking about how the constitutional process needs to be what is important here, and A.G. Barr is exactly right. What you're talking about is if there's obstruction, it's obstruction of something that wasn't a crime to begin with.
It's not required.
When you look at the basis of what the entire investigation was built upon, false information in a dossier that was largely debunked before it was even brought into the evidentiary process, you're talking about really weak reasoning. And in the meantime, you've got Joe Lunchbucket in Michigan trying to make sure that those cars are getting off the assembly line. You've got people across the country trying to make sure that their jobs are still in place.
They're worried about health care, immigration.
They want better wages. They want health care. They want all of it.
But I got to say, as a lawyer for 45 years, as a one-time judge, there is no element of obstruction that says there has to be an underlying crime.
Well, so listen to what Brian Fallon, who is a Democrat, been there for a long time, former aide to Chuck Schumer. He was quoted in the Washington Post saying this about the process. The next Democratic president needs to have a plan to bring about structural change because the days of Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill are gone, and they ain't coming back so long as McConnell is in charge on the Republican side. So really accusing the Republicans of playing politics. But
is that unique? I mean,
I don't think so.
Didn't President Obama,
as I recall,
didn't President Obama sit at the table when they had the big health care forum and say to John McCain, I won, John. Yeah. Elections have consequences. Both sides play. We won. It's our turn with the ball.
Yeah, we're in power
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually agree with that. It is true. If you win, you win. You know, I may not like all of the policies of this president, but he won. I'm not supposed to. But Mitch McConnell, I will tell you, I think that Mitch McConnell undermines our democracy more than anybody. When you do things like what he says the other day, when they say, would you fill a Supreme Court post this year? It's an election year. Well, of course I would.
He says he's perfectly consistent with what he said before.
But he's not. If you understand what he said before, he told us there was this great American tradition. You know what that tradition was? Of not putting a Supreme Court justice in the last year of a presidency. You go back 133 years to President McKinley. He appointed somebody in that year.
Kevin,
that's
a last word on that if you want to defend Mitch McConnell.
And by the way, they confirmed him.
Is this really where the American electorate's at? This is not what the election's going to turn on. The election's going to turn on the economy, jobs, and where we are as a nation.
Well, and possibly the Supreme Court, but not for the reason that,
Not
that you
for
said,
Mitch
Rick.
McConnell. Maybe in Kentucky, but nowhere else.
All right, Kevin McCullough and Rick Ungar, thank you.
Thank you.
Fairness, it's a concept that should be pretty basic, right? Something you're supposed to learn as a kid in the sandbox. And part of fairness means having enough perspective on yourself and enough perspective on others to know not to be so hypocritical. But the Democrats must never learned how to play so nicely in the sandbox, right? Because let's not forget how badly they all wanted the Mueller report. Remember, all of it released, right? All they could talk about was transparency. And I don't disagree with them on that. I like transparency. It is healthy. But in fairness, it's got to work both ways. I mean, this is all we have heard from them, right? So then, in fairness, in the interest of transparency, why wouldn't the Democrats, as the representatives for the people in this country, why wouldn't they want a full investigation into the origin of why the FBI was spying on the Trump campaign? Because some are selfish, self-motivated, and too many have no interest in protecting their constituents, only themselves, only their political futures. I mean, so now we have an attorney general in William Barr that is seeking real transparency and trying to determine the answer to that very basic question. Why the heck did the FBI spy on a political campaign? And yet he finds himself under attack by the very same people that have been yelling about the importance of transparency all along. Come on, guys. Come on. Be fair, right? They've subpoenaed Barr. They've voted to hold him in contempt of Congress. They're calling for his resignation or his impeachment. They want to fine him. And this one is pretty rich. They even talk about him as though he's some kind of crook, and they want the Justice Department to investigate him because he dared to offer his interpretation of the Mueller report, which Mueller at the time never seemed to have a problem with, right? But apparently just didn't like the media reaction. And because William Barr is asking the very legitimate question that our country deserves an answer to, and that is, were our country's intelligence departments weaponized? Were they weaponized for political purposes? I want answers to that. Everyone should want answers to that.
Democratic Congressman from California, member of the House Oversight Committee, Mark DeSaulnier. Good to see you, sir. Do you agree with your fellow member, the gentleman from Arizona here, that the administration is doing enough to stop interference for 2020?
No, I don't agree with them. I do agree with him on many things. Yeah. No, it is a shock, but that's okay. We can have a difference of opinion, but we should be engaged in a conversation about what we do to prepare the American public.
I want to button this up. You said in a statement just after Mr. Mueller's public statement that the House should proceed with impeachment hearings. You all come back in session this week. Does that mean you're in favor of impeachment?
Yes, I've been in favor for many months.
Okay. So if the vote was held today, you would impeach the president?
I have voted twice to send impeachment papers to the judiciary, so we start the process.
Help me understand this. You said you've been for it for months. What is the basis of that if now everybody's hanging their hat on the Mueller report?
I just believed in my own personal case, from my personal belief that he may well be guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. As you know, voting to send the papers to the Judiciary Committee starts the process. Then you have public hearings. Then you would come back to vote on whether you actually impeached him or not on the floor. I haven't reached that conclusion.
Okay.
I've reached the conclusion that we should start.
Okay, start, but you haven't reached a conclusion what the floor vote would be. Let's take a look at the polling here as it relates to this. Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, acknowledged that impeachment is a political process inherently. Should President Trump be impeached? Democrats, yes, 70, no, 20. Republicans, not surprisingly, 9% no, 87% no, only 9% yes. This is where it gets interesting. Independents, 33% yes, 45% no. By definition, impeachment is political. Do you worry what impeaching the president means for the Democrats come 2020?
Sure. But I think you have to adhere to the
Well,
Constitution.
tell me
and I'm old
about
enough
your
to
worries.
remember-
Tell me about your worries. You said, sure. What are the worries?
Well, you worry you overplay your hand. But having said that, I remember Watergate, and what changed the public, the people who defended Nixon, were those open hearings of the Senate and the House. And when they heard that, then the public changed, and it led to his resignation.
On the other hand, Bill Clinton left office after being impeached as one of the most popular presidents ever.
Right. So there you go. You can have it either way, but you've got to. But the American public needs to hear the facts, and then they determine that, and we represent them.
All right. This is an important quote. This is from Congresswoman Slotkin of Michigan, one of about a dozen, a few more on that list of Democrats who won districts that President Trump won in 2016. Impeachment is not what people are coming up to me in the grocery store and talking to me about. They want to know when we are going to lower the price of their son's insulin, when we are going to get federal dollars in for infrastructure. Effectively, reasonable people can agree that if there are impeachment hearings, no legislation is going to get done.
I don't agree with that. We've been passing legislation through the House to protect health care, to deal with prescription drugs.
But there's no way there's going to be bipartisan. There's going to be bipartisan real legislation that's going to get through the House, get through the Senate, and then get to the president's desk for a signature if you got impeachment hearings going on.
But on the other hand, you have to adhere to your responsibilities under the Constitution. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think you can do both.
Okay.
I acknowledge that you're going to have a lot of your focus taken away.
Huh. All right. Well, interesting perspective. We appreciate it, sir, and respect the oath you took and your diligence to it. It's good to see you. Safe travels back from California. It's a little hotter and more humid back here, so enjoy the California air while you can.
I'm aware.
All right. Good to see you. Thanks.
Thank you, Leland.